Before 9/11 took on a menacing meaning forever connected with terrorist attacks, 27 years earlier marked a different day of terror here in the Queen City.
September 11th, 1974. That's the date of the deadliest airline disaster in Charlotte aviation history. Accident investigators say it should have never happened.
Chief Transportation Correspondent and seasoned pilot Mackay Beeler takes a look back at the crash of Eastern Airlines Flight 212 on the 50th anniversary of the tragic accident. And Mackay, you're right, probably not near enough attention, especially on 9/11, of what took place then.
And this is a tough one to talk about because it could have been prevented. So yeah, it was supposed to be an easy flight from Charleston to Charlotte. The Queen City was an intermediate stopover on the way to the airliner's final destination, Chicago. But the plane never made it. That's because the brief 35-minute hop to Charlotte in an Eastern Airlines McDonnell Douglas DC-9 ended in tragedy. Of the 82 persons on board, only 10 survived the fiery crash. Now, unless you are a family member affected by the accident, chances are you haven't heard of it. Occasionally, comedian Stephen Colbert will mention it. His father and two of his brothers were passengers among the dead. Now, the aircraft crashed just a few miles short of the airport on an instrument approach to runway 36 at Charlotte Douglas International. Investigators found no mechanical problems. The plane was cleared for the approach, but got too low. It flew into the ground, obscured by dense morning fog. The captain was killed. The first officer, who was flying the plane under his supervision, told investigators everything seemed normal. It was not. The pilots ignored the oral altitude alerts that warned of impending danger.
What did the National Transportation Safety Board accident report, what did they kind of point to as the cause?
Yeah. Well, the NTSB report, in a nutshell, said the pilots basically were not paying attention. Poor cockpit discipline. The accident is classified as CFIT. That's for controlled flight into terrain. The cockpit voice recorder revealed the failure to follow standard operating procedures, what we pilots call SOPs.
So what are the SOPs when landing?
Yeah, it's kind of a step-by-step process. So it's a set of common procedures for safe operation of a commercial aircraft so that we do things consistently and safely, step by step for a task or a procedure. There's no guesswork involved. Was
there anything else that they kind of attributed to the accident?
Yeah, well, the worst thing is non-essential conversation, chit-chat in the cockpit, and it distracted the pilots from their flying duties. Also complacency. The pilot missed altitude call-outs, dismissed and muted oral altitude alerts. You don't ignore those things. Lack of situational awareness. They lost track of altitude at critical points, lax cockpit discipline. You know, like I said, not paying attention. Now, aero consulting expert and retired airline captain Ross Amer said, you know, 5 decades ago, adhering to the standard operating procedures and non-essential conversation and stabilized approach and crew resource management, well, it just wasn't as strictly enforced as today. Most airlines of those days had their own peculiar culture and discipline, which may have been totally different from what we follow these days. He said he's not saying that we've reached perfection today, but compared to those days 50 years ago, the airlines now have a pretty near perfect safety record of U.S. carriers in the past decade.
Did any new rules kind of come out of this whole tragedy?
Yeah. So I'll talk about this ever so often, the sterile cockpit rule. That's where we're going to focus on the task at hand. We're not going to talk about going to Cracker Barrel and having breakfast. We're not going to talk about anything else. And there were a series of accidents similar to this one where the flight crew was talking about other things. They were distracted. So yeah, there is a FAR, Federal Aviation Regulation out that says from the time you get in the plane and start taxiing to take off to climb out to your cruising altitude at least to 10,000 feet, only non-essential conversation.
Well, this is it again. It is sad. It is very unknown that we certainly don't think about. And I guess I didn't realize that there were survivors from this.
Not many.
You know, and so
yeah.
Mackay, thank you very much. Appreciate that.